Good morning. It's the day after Thanksgiving, Friday, on 2019. I'm Jeff McFadden. I'm going to talk to you today about climate change and about the accepted systems that we're offered to address climate change, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the specific threats that we are told are coming. Climate change is a process by which additional energy is captured by the terrestrial system, the Earth itself, the atmosphere, and the waters. And that energy shows itself in several different ways. And one of the ways it shows itself is as heat, as temperature. And we measure the temperature and we discuss what will happen at X degrees of rise, 1.5 degrees, all Celsius degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. And among the threats that are virtually universally agreed are drought, flood, the likelihood of what we call a multi-breadbasket failure, which is to say that on one or more continents simultaneously, all of the staple food crops that humankind relies on can fail in one season. If in the United States, well, our diet is so weird here. We don't know what we eat. We don't even realize. You hear all the time people say, well, corn's not, people food, soybeans not people food, they feed those to animals. Well, yeah, but if you read the ingredients in your various manufactured foods, you'll find that there's a lot of corn in them, and there's a lot of soybean oil, and there's a lot of other things that come from those resources. And we eat rice, and we eat bread, which comes from wheat. Those are all annual grasses. Grain is another word for grass. Cereal grain is another word for grass seeds. So the threat that in some unforeseen year there could be an almost universal failure of those crops, and then widespread starvation and all the things that go with it, widespread migration and refugeeism and all the things that go with it. That's one. Water, loss of availability of water for a number of purposes, loss of availability of water for agriculture, loss of availability of water for drinking are the big ones that we notice. Okay. Flooding of coastal regions, increased flooding of inland regions, because one of the things that happens when you have more energy in a system is the processes in that system occur at a higher rate of speed and at a larger magnitude. So after it rains, if it's warmer than it used to be, then the water evaporates out of the ground faster than it used to evaporate, and it accumulates in the atmosphere faster than it used to accumulate, and the increased energy allows more water to accumulate in the atmosphere, and so you have a faster accumulation of more water, and then when it falls back out, you have bigger rains that, more rain per unit of time, more inches per hour, and longer rains, like 50 inches before it stops, and all these things that we know of. These are all the things that we're concerned about with climate change. And we know that those things are already happening. We can measure them. You can read every day. You can find an article someplace in some major publication about the most recent destruction that has come as a result of the already accumulated energy. So, climate change promises to get worse over time. But the damage caused by climate change is no longer future damage. It is a recent past, present, and future issue. As the energy continues to accumulate, as the temperature continues to be measurably higher, the same things that we've already seen happen, which are results of acceleration and increased magnitudes caused by higher energy, those things will just get worse. And so the recommended solution is that we build high energy solutions which will enable us to continue to live the way we now live without emitting as much carbon. There's a buzzword that people use, net zero, which means net zero means we're still going to emit carbon, but we're going to miraculously cause that carbon to be extracted from the atmosphere more rapidly, so that it appears to, that the carbon balance, the carbon parts per billion in the atmosphere will remain stable, or even theoretically go down very slightly, even though we're still flying jets all over the world, because we have obtained net zero, which means we've built a bunch of machines to remove carbon from the atmosphere. According to Dr. Jem Bendell, we would need to build roughly 2 million more of them than we have today. We'd have to increase it. No, not 2 million more of them. We would have to increase it 2 million fold. So you take whatever we've built already in those machines, and I don't know what that number is, and we'd have to build 2 million times that much. And we'd have to find places on the earth to site them, to put them, and places inside the earth to store that carbon. We're going to build solar panels, wind generators, and electric cars, and those, generation of electricity is a big source of carbon emission, and automobiles and trucks are a big source of carbon emission. Agriculture is a huge source of carbon emission, and we're just pretending we don't know that. We're ignoring that one, because that way we can just talk about wind generators and solar panels and electric cars, renewables. But meanwhile, the theory is that we will just observe the worsening conditions around us while we build that, in a kind of a race where we will hope to get so much of that stuff built, installed, and placed and online that we no longer emit these levels of carbon. We will just not even concern ourselves about extraction, except that we will discuss machines to extract it. You get these phrases like negative emissions technology, which is amusing if nothing else. But meanwhile, the problems that we're already facing, the amount of the earth which is desert increases slightly every season. The number of people on the earth, the number of regions of the earth who don't have access to sufficient water increases steadily. And the theory is that we will just observe those events, cross our fingers, and focus all our energy and all our attention on building renewables. And every time we get another wind generator up, or every time we get another solar panel field planted, someone will say, that's progress. We're getting closer. I challenge that. I don't believe that that is. We need to observe the whole carbon cycle, and we need to observe the specific problem events which are threatening us now. You know, they're threatening, probably already causing refugee events, almost for sure already causing famines, almost, not almost, absolutely for sure already causing livestock die-offs, cattle dying because there's not enough water to support them. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to directly address those damages. We can address those damages in the immediate term without in any way changing the long-term focus on building magic machinery. I don't believe, as you can tell from my various negative phrasing, I don't believe that any of that machinery has any potential whatsoever to ever alleviate climate change or ever save any portion of the ecosystem. And I believe that there is a widespread refusal to address the energy budget for building this machinery. And almost all the conversation about installing wind turbines and solar panels, that conversation is based on we already have them. There's an assumption that we already have them there in a warehouse someplace, and it's just nobody will go out and install them. But we don't have them. And the only technology we have to build them is fossil fuel technology. And so if we try to build them, building them will result in increased emissions. It must. It's a new industry powered by fossil fuels that does not currently exist. The only way you can add a new industry to a fossil fuel system is by increasing your emissions. And the fact that there is a promise, verbal promise, that someday, because we increased our emissions now, our emissions then will be lower. I don't believe that promise, but even if I did, let's say it's true. Let's say that within 20 years we can start reducing the emissions that we increased to build all those. We don't have 20 years of increased emissions. We know that. But I'm just I keep going back to that because it bothers me so much. But let's go back to the specific problems. Water is a really critical problem. And without reducing the temperature, without reducing our emissions, we have means available to us to slow the travel of water through human-occupied systems. There's still as much water as there ever was. The problem is not that we're running out of water. The problem is that the water is not where we need it. And the reason it's not where we need it is not mostly because of increased carbon, even though that's a factor. The reason the water is not where we need it is mostly because of management errors that we have made over the past 100 years and over the past 1,000 years and over the past 6,000 years. And all those management errors together, we have reduced the ability of land to absorb rainwater when it falls. Modern agriculture almost completely destroys that ability. we have reduced the ability of land to hold water that it has absorbed. The fact that the higher energy increases the rate of evaporation it's a fact. It's inescapable. We're stuck with that. But it is also a fact that land with a low organic matter ratio cannot resist evaporation, that water moves up to the surface and evaporates off faster. And if there's organic matter within the land, that organic matter traps the water and it can't move up and it can't evaporate. So we have caused an increase in evaporative rate by our mismanagement, and then we have aggravated that increase by adding energy to the system, by increasing the temperature. We are stuck with the temperature for now, at least. I think that we can even address that. I believe that natural systems have the power to address even the temperature and the carbon in the atmosphere, but not fast. This is not an overnight success. But we can immediately increase the ability of our land to hold water by changing just certain parts of our agriculture. We don't have to give up our annual grains. We don't have to give up our tractors. We don't have to give up anything, except we have to take the knowledge that science gives us, and we need to hold that knowledge up against the advertising power of the fossil fuels and large equipment industry, and get farmers like my neighbor to abandon some of their systems and change over to other systems which are currently being used in the United States by high-speed, large-scale production farmers. We can improve the ability of all the land in the United States that is subjected to agriculture to hold water. If we're worried about water, and we know for sure that we can't have all our new high-tech, magic, non-carbon emitting stuff installed by next season, then why don't we start next season directly trying to conserve water? The same thing applies to topsoil. The same thing applies to heat, to temperature. All these blacktop parking lots are absorbing and retaining heat just the same as all the carbon in the atmosphere is. We know that. We've made a scientific error. We have gone from ignoring all the natural sciences to ignoring all the natural sciences except climate science. And it is a weakness in our scientific systems that we study things in small, discrete units, because that way we can get the variables down low enough to where it's roughly comprehensible what we're looking at. But all the things that I'm talking about are known scientific facts. And, you know, they're all published in peer-reviewed journals. We know absolutely for sure how to just mildly alter our agriculture. I talk a lot about going clear to a walking pace. I talk a lot about going clear back to animal power. Leave that all aside today. Just today, let's talk about the way the rest of the world wants to do it. and keep all this high-powered stuff. Okay, if we used all this high-powered stuff in different ways, ways that are known, ways that are proven by existing science, we could easily reduce the water shortages. Now there's one more. Now this one is almost hopeless. It's almost hopeless to get people to do this, and it would be one of the least expensive, most productive things that we could possibly do to improve water problems. We can literally recharge aquifers by the simple process of introducing beavers back into the whole United States. It is a fact. Once again, this is just regular science. It's not crazy guy talk. It is a fact that when the white people got here, virtually all the running streams in the United States had beavers in their watersheds. And virtually no running stream in the United States was a eroded gully of mud with water down in the bottom of it 10 or 15 feet away from the land surface. That 10 or 15 feet down there where that water is, that's where the water table is. If all those creeks had beavers in them, the water table would be almost at ground level. It would be that much higher. And the weight of all that stored water and gravity, particularly if we had a highly living soil, lots of organic matter in a soil, the weight of all that water pushes water down into the aquifers. The water's not rolling through, it's moving through it at, less than a crawling on your hands and knees pace as it goes through beaver dam after beaver dam after beaver dam, and it is stopped. And that depth of water and the gravity working on that depth of water and the absorptive power of soil to absorb water, those things literally recharge aquifers. People talk about, it takes 10,000 years to recharge an aquifer, and we've already got atrazine in ours, okay? They weren't spraying atrazine 10,000 years ago. Water's getting down there. Just not enough, not fast enough, and we're extracting too much of it. One of the biggest reasons that farmers extract water from the aquifers to irrigate their land is because the land won't hold water because it's dead. And if the land were alive, the life would hold water, the organic matter. And they wouldn't have to extract it from the aquifers. So we're losing water out of our aquifers, not because of the 1.5 degrees of increased temperature. We're losing water from our aquifers because the land won't absorb and store water, and there aren't any beavers to put them back, and we've done all these crazy things. It's all management errors. We can fix a lot of the things that climate change is threatening us with while we work on climate change. We don't have to watch them all go wrong and talk about building all these new emplacements of machinery. The new emplacements of machinery won't help. I don't care if you don't emit any carbon, dead soil won't hold water. This is science. This is science just as sure as any piece of climate science in the world. The same thing with the beavers. Ask any ecologist. Get all the ecologists come to your university and talk about beavers and the effect of beavers on the water cycle in the ecosystem they occupy. The things we're doing every single way that we kill this earth to make it be more like a parking lot, more convenient for us, that's what's making it not work to our needs. If the creek across the road from me was full of beavers, and we just said the beavers can go wherever they want, and they flooded this road, then if we had a nickel's worth of sense, we'd go out there and we'd build a wooden bridge over that beaver dam, over that beaver creek. And we'd drive slow enough to not fall through. Because every farmer in this entire drainage would benefit. Dollar value benefit. If we'd accept a little inconvenience to let nature fix our mistake. And as long as we refuse to let nature fix our mistakes aren't going to get fixed because we don't have the power to fix them. Nature made the system work. Nature can fix this system. We cannot refuse nature and win. It's just not possible. We need to start now doing the things necessary to alleviate the problems which we had already created and which are now getting worse with climate change. And while we're doing that, we can address the climate change itself. But there's no reason to wait until we get the carbon stopped, which we're never going to do anyway, so that's, just get used to that. There's no reason to wait for that. We know how to fix a lot of these problems, and we need to get to work on them right quick because we don't have forever. That's all. Thank you.